You hit your 10,000 steps today. Maybe you've been hitting them every single day for months, and yet your legs feel weaker than they did 2 years ago. Your quads fire slower. Climbing stairs takes more effort. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're wondering if this is just aging doing its thing. It's not aging. It's a mismatch. Here's the fact that changes everything. Walking, even daily, even consistent, even at a brisk pace, does not produce enough mechanical tension to stimulate the muscle protein synthesis pathway in men over 60. That pathway is called mTOR. And without activating it, your legs are not being rebuilt. They are slowly being dismantled. That's not an opinion. That is the biology of your legs right now, and it is fixable. My name is Marcus Reed. In the next several minutes, I'm going to show you 4 things that most men over 60 never discover. First, why walking, despite being excellent for your heart, actually fails your legs at the cellular level. Second, what specific type of muscle fiber you are losing right now, and exactly why that matters for balance, power, and fall prevention. Third, the precise neuromuscular protocol that reverses this loss without wrecking your knees or hips. Fourth, why 2 men can do the same workout and get completely different results based on one hormonal variable most trainers never measure. Stay through to the end. I'm going to give you a force multiplier, a single daily habit that amplifies every other strategy in this script, by a factor that researchers are calling, without exaggeration, the most underutilized recovery lever in men's longevity science. The aerobic trap. Why your daily walk is secretly betraying your legs. Gerald is 64 years old. He retired from 22 years in logistics management, got serious about his health, bought a quality pair of walking shoes, and committed to 10,000 steps 6 days a week. He lost 8 pounds. His doctor praised his blood pressure numbers. He felt proud. But 9 months in, Gerald noticed something nobody warned him about. His legs felt tired faster when he climbed stairs. He struggled to get up from low chairs without using his arms. He assumed it was normal. It wasn't. What happened to Gerald is happening to millions of men right now. And it starts with a cellular event called anabolic resistance. Here is the mechanism. Muscle tissue repairs and grows through a signaling protein called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. Think of mTOR as the foreman on a construction site. When your muscles experience sufficient mechanical load, real tension, real resistance, mTOR activates the crew. It tells satellite cells to divide, tells ribosomes to produce new contractile proteins, and tells your body to rebuild the fibers that were stressed. Walking does not create that load. Not for a 63-year-old man. Not at 10,000 steps. Not even at 15,000. Here is why. Walking is a low-intensity, repetitive, cyclical movement. It operates almost entirely within your slow-twitch type I muscle fibers, the endurance fibers. Those fibers are already relatively preserved in older men. The fibers you are losing, the ones responsible for explosive power, rapid stabilization, and fall prevention, are your fast-twitch type 2 fibers. And type 2 fibers do not respond to walking. They respond to load. They respond to speed. They respond to challenge. After 60, men lose type 2 fibers at a rate of approximately 1% per year if they do nothing to challenge them. That doesn't sound dramatic, but it means that by 70, a man who only walked could have lost a quarter of his fast-twitch capacity. That is the difference between catching yourself when you stumble and ending up on the floor. Gerald wasn't lazy. Gerald was misinformed. His 10,000 steps were cardiovascular medicine. Excellent for his heart, real for his blood sugar regulation, absolutely worth continuing. But they were not skeletal medicine. His legs needed a different prescription entirely. The precise protocol that addresses this uses a principle called progressive mechanical overload with compound movements. 3 sessions per week, non-consecutive days. Session structure. 2 lower body compound movements per session. Goblet squats and step-ups are the safest entry points for men with joint sensitivity. Sets of 8 to 12 repetitions. The load must reach a point where the last 2 repetitions require genuine effort, not pain effort. That distinction matters. For men worried about knees, goblet squats with a controlled 4-second descent reduce patellofemoral joint stress compared to conventional barbell squats. The dumbbell held at the chest shifts the center of mass forward. which reduces shear force at the knee. This is not modification for weakness, this is intelligent biomechanics for longevity. But here is what Gerald didn't know and what makes Chapter 2 so critical. Even if he starts lifting, one invisible hormonal variable determines whether those sessions actually rebuild his legs, or leave him exhausted and barely recovering. The cortisol ceiling, the hormone silently capping your muscle gains. Raymond is 67. He added resistance training. He showed up 3 times a week, did the work, tracked his sessions. After 12 weeks, his strength numbers improved modestly, but his muscle mass barely budged. His trainer told him to be patient. His doctor told him it was age. Neither one asked him about his stress. Raymond ran a small contracting business. He worked 6 days a week. He slept 5 to 6 hours a night. And his cortisol, the adrenal stress hormone, was chronically elevated. That cortisol was systematically dismantling every gram of muscle protein his workouts were trying to build. Here is the mechanism. Cortisol is catabolic by design. It evolved to break down stored energy, including muscle tissue, to fuel the fight-or-flight response. In short bursts, cortisol is life-saving. In chronic elevation, cortisol becomes your body's most efficient muscle destruction system. It activates a signaling molecule called myostatin, the biological brake on muscle growth, and suppresses mTOR simultaneously. Imagine building a wall and having someone remove bricks from the other side at nearly the same pace. That was Raymond's physiology. After 60, the cortisol to testosterone ratio shifts dramatically. Testosterone, the anabolic counterweight to cortisol, declines at approximately 1 to 2% per year from peak levels. Cortisol does not follow the same trajectory. What this creates is a widening catabolic window. More destruction signal, less rebuilding signal, and the gym becomes increasingly ineffective unless you actively manage this ratio. The protocol for cortisol management has 3 components that directly affect muscle recovery. First, sleep architecture. Deep, slow-wave sleep is when growth hormone pulses most powerfully. Even one night of 4 to 5 hours of sleep reduces the anabolic response to resistance training by up to 18% the following day. Raymond's 6-hour nights were costing him nearly a fifth of his training investment. Second session duration. Training sessions beyond 45 to 60 minutes consistently drive post-exercise cortisol higher in men over 60 compared to younger athletes. Shorter, denser sessions produce better hormonal outcomes. 40 minutes of focused resistance work outperforms 90 minutes of low-intensity effort for anabolic signaling in the aging male. Third, protein timing. Consuming 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein within 2 hours post-training directly counters the cortisol-driven muscle protein breakdown window. The leucine content in that protein, specifically 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine, acts as the direct trigger for mTOR activation. Raymond restructured his sleep, shortened his training windows, and added a post-workout protein meal. In the next 8 weeks, his body composition shifted more than in the previous 12. But there's a third layer that Raymond still hadn't addressed, and it's the one most men over 60 never even hear about. The neuromuscular wiring between your brain and your legs is degrading independently of muscle size. And rebuilding that wiring requires a completely different training tool. The neural gap. Why your brain is losing the signal to your legs. Thomas is 71. He's stronger than most men half his age. He lifts consistently, eats his protein, manages his sleep. But 6 months ago, he tripped on an uneven sidewalk and went down hard, fractured his wrist catching himself. His muscles weren't the problem. His reaction speed was. What Thomas experienced was the consequence of a process called motor unit dropout, the gradual degeneration of the neural connections between your spinal motor neurons and your muscle fibers. After 60, men lose motor units at an accelerating rate. The surviving motor units try to compensate by expanding their territory. One neuron controlling more fibers, but this compensation reduces precision and speed. Think of it like a city's electrical grid losing substations. The remaining substations carry more load, but response time across the grid slows. A power spike, a stumble, a sudden change in terrain overwhelms the degraded system. Walking does not address this. Standard slow resistance training only partially addresses this. What directly targets motor unit recruitment speed is explosive intent training, moving a moderate load with maximum intentional speed. The protocol: 2 sets of 3 to 5 repetitions per exercise, using 40 to 60% of your maximum load, with the explicit instruction to move the weight as fast as possible on the lifting phase. The weight moves slowly because physics, but the neural intent is maximum. This intent, not the actual velocity, is what recruits fast-twitch motor units and forces the neuromuscular system to sharpen its firing patterns. For men with joint concerns, this applies perfectly to seated leg press, dumbbell squat, and cable-resisted step exercises. The fast intent principle works at any load, which makes it safe and progressive, regardless of starting strength. Thomas added 2 sets of fast intent leg press to each session. Not more volume, different intent. Within 10 weeks, his reactive balance scores, measured with single leg stance duration, improved by 31%. But the final chapter is where everything either accelerates or stalls. Because there is one systemic failure that happens to virtually every man over 60 who starts training, and it operates completely beneath awareness until the damage is already done. Before the final chapter and the force multiplier, I want to ask you something directly. Right now, when you climb a flight of stairs, which leg feels noticeably weaker? Or is it both? Do you feel your balance shift unexpectedly during everyday movements? Drop your answer in the comments. Not just so I can see it, but so the men watching after, they are not alone in this. The comment section of this channel is where real conversations about real physiology happen. Use it. The mitochondrial drain. Why your leg muscles run out of energy too fast. Victor is 68. He started lifting. He managed his cortisol. He trained with explosive intent. And yet his legs fatigued faster than expected during sessions. His muscles weren't weak per se. They ran out of fuel. Victor's mitochondria were aging. And nobody had told him that mitochondria, the energy-producing organelles inside every muscle cell, decline in both number and efficiency after 60. Think of them as the power plants inside each muscle fiber. Older power plants generate the same amount of output for a while, but they run dirtier, produce more cellular exhaust, reactive oxygen species, and eventually produce less energy per unit of fuel consumed. This is why Victor's legs fatigued faster. The ATP, the cellular currency of muscle contraction, was being generated too slowly to meet the demand of his training. The protocol that directly stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria, is a training method called Zone 2 cardio, combined with resistance training within the same weekly schedule. Zone 2 refers to a heart rate range of approximately 60 to 70% of maximum, the intensity where you can speak in full sentences but find singing uncomfortable. At this intensity, a signaling molecule called PGC, 1-alpha activates. PGC, 1-alpha, is the master regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis. It tells the cell to build more power plants and upgrade the existing ones. 3 resistance sessions per week, plus 2 Zone 2 sessions of 20 to 30 minutes each. This combination creates what researchers call concurrent training adaptation. The resistance sessions build the structural framework, muscle fiber cross-section, motor unit recruitment. The Zone 2 sessions upgrade the energy infrastructure inside those fibers. One without the other leaves you with either a powerful engine with poor fuel delivery or excellent fuel delivery inside underdeveloped machinery. Victor's fatigue resolved within 6 weeks of adding structured Zone 2 work. His training sessions felt more sustainable. Recovery between sets improved, and his overall energy outside the gym, the metric men care about most, climbed measurably. Here is the force multiplier. It costs nothing. It takes 3 minutes. And it doubles the effectiveness of every single protocol in this script. It is called post-activation potentiation breathing. Specifically, a structured nasal breathing reset between sets. Here is the mechanism. During resistance training, sympathetic nervous system activation drives cortisol and adrenaline upward. This is appropriate for the working set. But if cortisol remains elevated during the rest period, it suppresses the anabolic recovery window between sets. Slow nasal breathing, a 4-second inhale through the nose, a 6-second exhale through the nose, activates the parasympathetic nervous system within 90 seconds. This parasympathetic shift lowers interset cortisol, improves heart rate recovery, and creates a more favorable hormonal environment for the next set's anabolic response. Men who implement structured interset breathing report lower perceived exertion at identical loads faster neuromuscular readiness for subsequent sets, and measurably better session quality. 3 minutes of intentional breathing across a 40-minute session changes the hormonal context of the entire workout. Do this between every set. 4 counts in through the nose. 6 counts out through the nose. That's the force multiplier. Deceptively simple, biologically profound. You now understand something that the majority of men over 60 will never take the time to learn. You understand the difference between cardiovascular health and skeletal health. You understand mTOR, myostatin, cortisol, type 2 fiber loss, motor unit dropout, mitochondrial biogenesis, and the neuromuscular gap between intent and performance. You didn't just watch a fitness video. You studied the mechanisms of your own biology. That puts you in the top 5%. Not because you're exceptional, though you may be, but because you showed up, you paid attention, and you're willing to act on evidence rather than assumption. The men who transform their legs after 60 are not the ones who trained the hardest in their youth. They are the ones who understood the rules changed and adapted their approach with precision and patience. Your legs are not done. Your neuromuscular system is not fixed. Your mitochondria respond to the right signal at any age. The biology is clear. The protocol is in your hands. Strong legs don't just carry your body. They carry your freedom, your independence, and your confidence for the next 20 years. Train like the science is on your side. Because it is.